Liberty County Commissioners Court Workshop, November 13th. It's about 9 o'clock. We're about 2 minutes past 9 right now. With the record show, Commissioner Barbowski, Commissioner Arthur, Commissioner Clark are here. And this workshop agenda topic is a presentation and update from Trinity River Solar. So, folks, if y'all are here, and if you would please step up to the mic and be sure and introduce yourselves. Tell us where you're from, who you are, etc.
Perfect. Does that work okay? All right.
Yeah.
My name is Garrett Peters. I'm a consultant with Katie Andrews. I want to thank the commissioners and the county judge for having us here today. This is Tiffin Wong with Light Source BP. We're here to talk about the Trinity River Solar Project, which we have visited about several times before. It is in Mr. Barbowski's precinct. If it's okay, I'm going to pass out a few materials.
And Garrett, if you would give us a description, like location, how many acres, all the good pertinent information.
Yes, sir. If you'll go flip to page 2, that has a map. That'll be very helpful for. Sorry.
Thank you.
You want to go ahead and provide the description?
So this project has been in the works for.
Name first.
Excuse me. Thank you. Tiffin Wong, Light Source BP.
Tiffin
Wong, Tiffan Wong, like the Asian name, WONG.
WONG.
Yep.
Okay.
This project has been in the works, I believe, since actually 2019, where a local developer signed the landowner with the Henderson Ranch or Spindletop Ranch, and it was sold to Light Source BP, I think, in 2022. I've been on the project since mid-23, and we've been working really hard at finding technical solutions on the project, trying to build a solar project in a hurricane-prone zone. After Harvey, there were some changes in some technical requirements with Entergy, which made it a little bit difficult to find a solution. So we worked really hard at and finding something that will work, and we found a really good technical solution, which means we have been pushing this project forward once we found that solution. The reason I explain this is to try and describe why we had that pause between 2023 and 2024, and now we're starting these conversations again as we had to find that solution. Our project is expected to be about 175 megawatts, and that is AC power, about, I think, 1,100 acres of solar panels over several parcels, all along Rice Belt Road and County Road 105. And we went out there yesterday talking to the landowner. He's very supportive of the project. We've also worked with some of his land management groups to try and use as much local power as possible. For example, Light Source BP, one of the, I think, the best features about this company is that we do agrivoltaics, which is grazing beneath the solar panels, which is some companies choose not to do it because of the risk, but we do. And he's got some connections, and we're trying to have some of his team do some of the grazing to add to the local labor force.
Good.
So, yep. That is the essential summary of the project. We've already done all of our wetland surveys and water body surveys, our species surveys. We haven't found anything. We've worked directly with the Corps to find a way to build the project with as minimal wetland impacts as possible to jurisdictional wetlands and keeping our crossings very minimal, which allows us to stay under the nationwide permitting program. I'm sure y'all know about how difficult it is to build in wetlands, and you have to be very careful. So we're going to increase our environmental monitoring during construction so that they keep their impacts very low to stay under those nationwide permit requirements. And we just had our engineering group on site yesterday to take a look at some of the existing field drains from the previous rice fields, and see what we need to do and what we can leave in place so that once the project is done and we pull everything out, that the landowner can reuse the land as previously used if desired.
Okay. So it's 1,100 acres. How many megawatts?
About 175 megawatts.
Okay. And you'll allow grazing once again.
Yes, yes.
Is this sheep or goats
Sheep,
or cows?
sheep. Yeah.
Sheep,
So
okay.
goats would jump. Cows are too big. We would have to use these huge piles for cows.
Yeah.
The landowner did ask about it, but it's just so expensive for that big steel post. So we do sheep. And sheep in this part of Texas, we're gonna have to find a special breed that can handle this heat. So
Okay. Alrighty. And once it's completed, how many employees do you anticipate?
solar projects generally don't have a large maintenance crew. It's a pretty clean facility. We tend to have only one allocated for the project. Once it's built, fence is done, power's turned on. You have one to maintain the any kind of grazing or washing or make sure anything doesn't.
One person is going to wash
One person.
1,100 acres
One
of
person is
solar.
going to manage the contracts,
Okay.
essentially, yeah, and be a safety person on site.
Cool.
That would be a very busy job.
Okay.
So are you going to go through this packet?
Yeah, we can in more detail. We're kind of going to hit the high notes. Tiffin was just covering more of the operational and history of Lightsource BP, which there's not so much of that in the packet. The packet is just initially it's a map, and then we kind of walk through the previous proposals that we worked on with the county. And yeah, we're happy to take that up
So
when the county's ready.
what is Lightsource BP? And I'm looking at the logo and the way BP is written. That's British Petroleum, right?
That's right.
Okay. So who owns Lightsource BP?
Lightsource BP is a separate entity owned by BP, and that happened last year. Previously, it was a joint-owned company with Lightsource as over 50% and BP at 49.7% or something like that. Last year, they announced that they would be acquiring the company completely. BP, correct. They closed down their internal renewables group and brought everybody over, and so they own Lightsource BP, but we are not an internal department. So we have our own approvals stream, but we are eventually, or at the very top, managed by BP. Does that help?
So this is part of their claim for green energy for the.
Yes, for low carbon energy, low carbon.
In sheep.
Huh?
In sheep.
That's right.
Okay.
Let's go through the packet.
All right. So we've covered the maps. On the second slide, we kind of start into the summary of the previous tax abatement discussion that occurred. So we just talked about what abatements are, what pilots are, and then the specific request that was made. So I'll kind of flip through those title slides, and we'll go to this one right here that has a picture of the courthouse that says what are abatements. So the intent of the abatement is to create a contract between the company and the county or any other jurisdiction to essentially regulate the project in exchange for items that are important to the project and project's development in the form of tax savings. Obviously, with the abatement, there's a large amount of pilots that would be sent to the county or any other jurisdiction that participates in abatements, and they just add a little bit of flexibility, as the county does not have much ability, or most counties in Texas don't have much ability to regulate this type of development. And so when you look at the previous abatement that was drafted by Mr. Kimbrough in that contract, it had requirements like local hiring, health insurance, staffing of the project, charitable contributions, setbacks, noise buffers, all kinds of things that generally a project wouldn't participate in exchange for some trade-offs on tax savings. So moving ahead to this slide, it says ag exemption and pilot here. This is the following slide. After that, what are slide? So looking at an ag exemption is a form of tax abatement in the state of Texas. It's actually almost about a 99.9% tax abatement, right? You have the market value of the land, but it's used for agricultural purposes or wildlife management. It's generally taxed at less than 1% of its value. So all of this land that we're currently talking about, the Henderson Ranch, is ag exempt. We're going to touch on that later because over the last 35 years, this land has paid less than $100,000 in taxes to the county. We project that once this project is constructed, it will pay multi-million dollars to the county, and we'll get into those numbers here later, even with the tax abatements. Additionally, the ag exemption, as we all know, is pretty much in perpetuity. As long as the property stays in ag activity for 5 of the last 7 years, it's going to continue to receive that ag exemption. A pilot or an abatement can be a maximum term of 10 years. In the previous conversations that we've had with the county and with Mr. Kimbrough, the agreement was structured as a 5-year agreement, which I know I talked about in court previously. That is one of the lowest terms I've ever seen on the solar property tax abatement agreement in the state of Texas. Additionally, it's narrow, targeted, moderate reductions, and it's a contract like we've talked about that has obligations for the company to meet. So flipping to the next slide, it says why a pilot makes sense for Liberty County. One of the biggest reasons that I see counties enter into these agreements is that it is very defined in the agreement. Here's the revenue the county will receive. Every single year it can be budgeted. There's no questions about it. It's a contracted number. Additionally, it insulates the county from the valuation of the project each year, right? Any other taxpayer, their value times the tax rate, it goes into your tax rate calculation. If it's a large enough value, or there's a discrepancy in value, sometimes there could be litigation with large taxpayers. The abatement removes all that. It says, here's the number the county's getting every year. It doesn't matter what the value is, doesn't matter what our tax rate is, it's defined in the agreement. So even if property tax law were to change in the state of Texas that says solar is no longer taxable, don't believe that's ever going to happen, but if it did happen, well, in the agreement we've said we're paying this amount of money to the county every year, no matter what. Lastly, on the right side of that, we talk about the ability for the county to negotiate items in, such as road use, emergency services, or other local priorities. So the following slide talks about why we're asking for a pilot. Why is this important to the project? So the big question here, you should see a chart that kind of has a bunch of circles with arrows, is, and one of the things that Tiffin just touched on is, this project obviously paused for a while. You didn't hear from me. You didn't hear from Lightsource BP. We were hot and heavy, bothering everybody in 2022, and then we somewhat just disappeared, for quite a time into 23 and 24. So the reason for that is not just something specific to Lightsource BP, but across the industry and across everything we're seeing, whether it's school construction and bonds, prices have been going up for everything. And so when that occurs, when our materials and our inputs costs go up, we've got to step back and say, does this project make any sense? Is it financially viable? Now Lightsource BP is in a better frame of mind around this project, and they've defined a lot of those inputs. But one of the things that's very, very important is this property tax component. It is the single largest expense next to insurance that a solar project has every single year. There's not a lot of labor, as we talked about. So there's not that large labor expense every single year. So it's insurance and property tax right at the top of the income statement. Additionally, as I'm sure y'all are aware, we did have a Chapter 313 agreement with Devers ISD, which is their form of an abatement. Ultimately, because the project was delayed, we had to void that agreement, meaning that we don't have the benefits, nor does Devers ISD have the benefits of that agreement. So in Devers ISD, we're going to be a normal taxpayer. Value each year times their tax rate. Regardless, we will still be once this project is built, this will be the largest taxpayer in Devers ISD by a long shot. That's a significant impact because that gets taxes off rooftops, off the residents that actually attend those schools and work at those schools, and it moves it onto a large taxpayer that is Lightsource BP. instead of the hardworking local folks. That
What's the value?
the value of this project will be $240 million. And I have a handout I'll hand out in a little bit that walks through those numbers.
Okay.
Any other comments on this slide about
No.
materials cost? Okay. So on the next page, you'll see that same chart. It's a 5 block and a 4 block bill. And so this gets to more of who Lightsource BP is a company, right? They're not just developing Trinity River Solar. Tiffin has multiple projects that she's working on. Lightsource BP has multiple projects that they're working on, not just in Texas, but across the U.S. and internationally. Lightsource BP does have several constructed projects in Texas. So that's a major key factor I want to point out here is that we are not coming to Liberty County and saying, hey, take a chance with us. This is our first time ever doing this. We've never built a solar project. We don't know what we're doing. Give us a tax abatement and let's see if it works out. This is a totally different story. Lightsource BP has operational projects in Lamar County, Texas, Navarro County, Texas, Ellis County, Texas, Starr County, Texas. I may miss a few. On almost all those projects, we've received property tax abatements of a similar sort and fashion to what we're discussing today. We've worked with county judges, we've worked with the commissioner's court, we've worked with the school districts. But what brings me back to this slide is that those are projects that are constructed. There are future projects in development at Lightsource BP, and they are all competing for capital, right? Just like this gentleman talked about football coaches and having to select football coaches based on the different pro cons. There are pro cons of these projects, which have the best returns. What do we have the materials allocated for? And so there's a lot of inputs that go in here. And once again, property taxes is one of those inputs. So flipping on to the next slide.
Let me ask you a quick question.
Go ahead, sir.
175 megawatts. How many rooftops would that serve? How many rooftops could that serve?
I believe that's close to about 30,000, 35,000 Texas homes based on Texas use.
Yeah, we got bigger houses here.
Yeah,
35,000.
per year for the year. And that again adds to the energy base. We have all different types of power sources here in Texas, as you know, and just having one more to the bucket is very helpful.
You do realize Devers doesn't have 35,000 homes, right?
Right.
That's right. Yes, I understand that.
But it seemed to have that many sheep. Okay, but yeah. But yeah, my question is, you'll be selling this energy on the grid, no doubt. Is that right?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
You'll be selling this on the grid, right?
Yes, to Entergy. I'm sorry, yes, through Entergy to the MISO South network. So
Okay.
The way power works, I like to explain it like a bucket of water. You put the drip in and the tap that out. The very first line, or the people on the line first, get the power first directly from that source. So we're putting the energy onto the lines, and most likely the people along that line will get that power from the solar plant first.
So your big customer would be Entergy itself.
Yes.
That's since they're the only phone company in town. So to
Yes,
speak.
yes.
Okay.
The utility company will be Entergy. We do have power agreements with household names,
Mhm.
and we are being paid by that company to put this project on. So.
For reference, the previous project that Liberty County entered into an abatement with, it's Liberty County Solar by Recurrent Energy. That project is about half the size of this project.
Okay.
So this next page is just a little bit of it's a table right here. It's a little bit illustrative, but we kind of walk through the different variables that we were talking about as these projects compete for capital. You know, return on investment, net present value, internal rate of return, all of the things that go into project financing. No different than if the county is looking at capital projects. It's just a very similar analysis. Then another illustrative analysis, just comparing, you know, if the projects were in different counties, how much of an impact an abatement could make, you know, as far as percentage points on the internal rate of return and the return on investment. And it does have a significant impact. I know that we're saying, hey, we're asking for a 5-year benefit from the county, where we'll make pilots and we'll trade this regulation and so on. While it does not seem like a super material amount that we're asking for, it does significantly improve the profile of the project, and ultimately it can flip the project over the hurdle to say, okay, this now meets the investment criteria for Lightsource BP. let's put the capital in and build the project.
Step off a little bit there, and pilot's payment in lieu of tax.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Compare that to just standard abatement.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So with the standard abatement, generally what you'd see is you'd see a contract between the taxpayer and the jurisdiction, and it would say, hey, over a period of 10 years or less, your taxes will be reduced by a certain percentage, and that's agreed upon in the agreement. Once again, that brings in value times tax rate and then a percentage reduction, right? So it's ultimately dependent on what the value is each year, what the tax rate is each year, things we don't know out for the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Pilots are much the inverse, where there is an agreed upon percentage, and the percentage is 100%. And in exchange for that 100%, a payment in lieu of taxes is then given to the jurisdiction. And generally in the agreement, that payment in lieu of taxes is defined. You're receiving this much money by this date, and if you don't, we're in default. Those are really the two differences, I would say. I could get in the weeds about tax rates and the impact there, why it's really important to have that 100% abatement. But as we see driving around, Liberty County is in a high growth trajectory right now. So I think values are going up in the county regardless, even if this project comes. So I think y'all are very well versed in that impact on your tax rate right now.
You're probably in the one spot out there where you won't see a major jump
right
in land values, but they're coming.
Yes.
Yeah. But, okay.
What's the life expectancy of these solar panels?
About 35 years, possibly longer.
And as they decline or at the end of the project life, we revisit this project with the landowner and with the county. Usually we'll do an extension for about 5 years. So the panels will stay in place between 35 and 40 years. And as panels need replacement or maintenance, a lot of times we'll replace panels or upgrade them. But they remain efficient up to about 75% for the first 30 years. So they're still producing good energy for a long time.
That's
Rick?
what.
You'll probably get into the weeds on that, but of course, what we're looking for is what the central appraisal district contributes to the value, and just going through that experience with solar, Liberty Solar Project, it's a rapid depreciation over 10 years, and it goes from 100% to 20% in year 9. So after the 5 years, obviously there's a steep decline on it. And you also have circuit breaker. When you take this land and raise the value on it, circuit breaker cuts value. Again, all these things affect tax revenue when you look at it. And our experience with the other project is after 10 years, there's some question if those solar panels are actually even efficient anymore because of technology and all these changes. Plus, they depreciated down to 20% of the value. So when we really start to kick in value in year 6, we're getting about 52% or 55%. There's a schedule. And that's what Central Appraisal District is going to generate tax dollars to us. So I know that analysis probably not, you're using the full return on the initial cost of investment that rapidly declines. And in fact, I just did an analysis on that one, and it takes almost a year 13 before there's some kind of net return back to the county for what revenue they gave up.
Yep. And I'm so glad this gentleman brought up those points. That's what's unique about this proposal, that it's only 5 years, whereas most abatements in the state of Texas are 10 years. The second year 6 hits, the county starts recouping the savings that they provided to the project. And in year 6, that value is obviously a lot higher than it is in year 11. And so from year 6 to 10, the county will recoup its investment significantly. And then with it obviously being a 35-year project life, there's another 25 years of taxation after year 10 as well. Since we're kind of skipping around, I'll go ahead and pull that because I think it's important to talk about. So here is the previous abatement proposal that was made, and we've layered in the 2025 tax rates that the county just passed in of of 0.48%. We put in the project values, and I will walk through this in some detail here. So on the left side, we have the year, okay? And this is the tax year. So I don't want everyone to think this is the calendar year. This would be the tax year. In the second column, we have the total investment of the project. So 240 million, that's going to stay the same every single year. And then it's going to get depreciated in that third column, which is labeled factor. That's what the gentleman was describing here. That depreciation each year, which is set by the state, that's not something we're doing. We're just taking that 8.5% per year and depreciating it down. Then the fourth column is taxable value. So that is the plant column, the 240 million multiplied by that percentage, and then the taxable value each year. Then the 0.48%, which is the Liberty County M&O and INS tax rate. And then the sixth column is labeled without agreement estimated taxes. Okay. You'll notice for the first 3 years it is zero. So 26, 27, 28, there is no tax revenue shown here. Then the project enters service, and it is very simple: taxable value times tax rate. In year one, that's $1,152,000, and then it drops down from there. That is what would happen if there was no abatement and the project did get built. Okay, the keyword is if it did get built. The final two columns, you'll see it start with abatement percentage and then proposed pilot's previous agreement terms, September 15th, 2023. So you'll notice in those first 3 years, there's something different there. On the proposal on the left side, normal taxpayer, there's nothing in those 3 years. On the right side, there's 75,000, 50,000, and 50,000. Okay, you recall from our conversations way back at the when that this was a really unique item that we added in. It says, number one, that 2026 item, $75,000, that's just for entering into a contract with the company. Meaning that if the project gets built or not, the county gets 75 grand just for taking us to the dance, right? Then there's some milestone payments. 2027, if the project starts construction, of 50,000. 2028, when the project completes construction, another 50,000. Then the pilots for 5 years, increasing 50,000, 90,000, 160,000, 215,000, and 250,000. Then you'll notice in year 6, the colored cell goes away, the pilot goes away, and the columns match. The estimated tax column and the other tax column, they're the same every single year because there's no more abatement. We're just a normal taxpayer again. Okay? So in year 6, we pay $662,000 a year, 564, then 466, 368, 270. Then, as this gentleman mentioned, it reaches that 20% schedule that the state sets, and it just stays there in perpetuity at $230,000 per year. So this table, I know it's a lot. It's a lot to digest. If you look at this next slide in the presentation, it kind of sums it all up in total. One more, it should have a picture of some roads and some
Yeah.
So sums it up: $240 million investment, 7.9 in county taxes, 19.2 million in Devers ISD school district revenues, 1 full-time job, and 200 construction jobs. Okay. So there's no questions. I'll kind of skip ahead again. We've got a short slide just talking about the indirect effects of a construction project, which I'll likely see over and over again. Local lodging, hardware stores, restaurants. But I want to marry up that table that I showed you with, we can honestly skip right to this slide.
Okay.
I have another question.
Yes, sir.
Of course, this is just the personal property improvement. That's the facility. Is this going to be a lease or is this a purchase?
It is going to be a lease. Okay. The land is not subject to the abatement. The land will lose its ag exemption, meaning there will be a very sizable rollback, and the land will revert to market value. Given that you mentioned the circuit breaker, so the circuit breaker expires at the end of 2026, I believe. So, yeah.
They didn't do it this year.
And the other thing too is I know that it caps at $5 million. This land will be worth significantly more than that, so it may get hamstrung by that if it still exists. circuit breaker. But
So does that mean there'll be tax revenue coming from the owner that's leasing the property?
that's correct.
Yeah, they'll lose their ag exemption, just like now they have a huge ag exemption on it. They're paying like over 98% exemption on it for the ag. And then, but by changing the use of it, it'll factor in a rollback, which means they have to go back to 5 years and pay the difference in the ag and the deal plus 7% penalty. So that's income coming in. And then going forward, this is just the revenue from the personal property,
Right.
which is the only thing subject to the depreciation and all that.
The improvements.
But now, if it's worth $1,500 an acre and they're getting 98% exemption, we'll now get our 48 cents on that $1,500 completely in addition to the rollback. So
Okay.
there's additional revenue that's not in this cash
That's right.
stream here that we're not getting now because it's an ag.
All we've tried to illustrate here is a very conservative. Here's the personal property. The land will be appraised every single year by the appraisal district. We don't have any control over that valuation for the most part, right? It's going to be based on a market analysis, a sales analysis. You know, what do these types of projects or land parcels go for per acre in the market? But that's going to be a substantial six-figure payment to the county that will occur as soon as the first shovel hits the ground, when the change of use changes from rice farms to solar development, cattle.
How long is the lease?
35 years with a 5-year extension.
So in these bullets right here, we kind of walk through that table, just explaining it more in detail. And what I want to remind everybody is this is, while we did introduce some concepts into this in discussions with Mr. Kimbrough back in 2023, I would say this is 99% his original agreement. The only things that we introduced were the upfront payments. Those were not originally in the agreement.
Mhm.
And if I could go way back in time in history and kind of give color on why that happened, because I have said in the past, and I'll say it again, that is super unique in tax abatement agreements to see upfront money like that. The reason was at the time, the county was looking at the Liberty County solar project as well as our project. And I believe there was another project called Industrial Kilo as well.
Mhm.
So the Liberty County solar project ended up getting a tax abatement. And one of the very important things that was in that agreement, I believe, was the project was going to give some land or some sort of real property to the county. In discussions with Mr. Kimbrough, he said, we don't have any land to give the county, and the county may not want our land either on in the Industrial Kilo project or this Trinity River project. And so we tried to identify what is something that we could offer up to the county in order to make us more comparable to that project's proposal. And so that's where these prepayments came in. That was the reason for them. We're happy to revisit how those should look, but all we did is take what was in that September 2023 agreement and put that here, obviously updating for your tax rate, updating for the project's costs. So we walked through the total compensation to the county in those first 5 to 8 years being $945,000. It's a 5-year, 100% abatement of county taxes in exchange for pilots with that upfront consideration in red. So this is the most fascinating analysis on the next page. It's just 2 water cups. I know it's elementary, but it's really fascinating when we talk about the ag exemption. So over the last 35 years, the county has received less than $65,000 actually from this project. If the project gets built over the next 35 years, it will receive $7.9 million, with the majority of that being in the first 10 years. So it really is, from a yield perspective, it's really significant. That's why we come and we say, yes, we are asking for an abatement, but it is a net gain to the county if the abatement is granted and this project is built. It's a net gain for all the jurisdictions. So are there any questions after we've kind of shown the numbers? Is there anything we can better address? Yes, sir.
Okay, so the investment committee, I guess, including with the Liberty County the winner, if we can get the abatement, is that the conclusion you draw from this, or are we still in contention for it?
So this is an illustrated table. We are not actively talking to Hardin County or Chambers County or Montgomery County about a project. What we're trying to illustrate is that projects ultimately that do receive abatements from counties generally have a better success chance of getting built than not, if that makes sense.
Because it's still contingent on being built. like you said, if it goes away or they don't build it in that 3-year period, those pilots stop. But the project, still, they lost their ag exemption. But they haven't really, because they haven't changed the use of it.
Yeah.
And you don't lose your ag exemption until you change the use of the property.
That's correct.
So until they start turning ground or flattening it out, changing it out of that, because right now that 1,100 acres is part of a 30,000 acre project through the Central Appraisal District, or whatever it is, 26,000, whatever. So it's automatically going to come in and have an increased value by being a multiple of size. So that's when circuit breaker will come in. And I think it takes 20% of that out of the deal. But again, none of this happens until they change the use of it.
Right.
It'll continue to get its ag exemption, even though we sign up on this agreement. The next so many years, it's going to get the ag, keep the ag until you change it and start building the project.
Yeah. So let's talk about risks here. So let's say that the county does ultimately approve a tax abatement agreement with the project, and the project doesn't get built. County receives the $75,000 abatement payment. Project doesn't get built. Project is in default of the tax abatement agreement. Tax abatement agreement is over. The upside is county enters into tax abatement agreement, $75,000 payment is made, construction starts, all those payments flow. But if the county enters into a tax abatement agreement with the project doesn't get built, agreement's in default, agreement gets terminated. So when we look at that from a risk perspective, if we sign this agreement, we are now aligned saying we got to build this thing because we want the savings that are in this agreement. We know that if we sign an agreement with the county and we don't build the project, we're not ever going to be able to do any business with Liberty County ever again.
So with the change or the evaporation of tax credits and all that, I know you said there's some other things that's going on, but BP's pretty well divulged themselves of a lot of their wind projects and assumed a lot of these solar projects losing the tax credit in 24, but that was the last year of it. And then with the new administration basically de-emphasizing solar projects, do you think this still has momentum to go forward into being a reality?
Absolutely. We have, I think, Lightsource BP, because we're affiliated and we're supported by BP, we've been able to be very flexible, where smaller companies that don't have the backing of a large company like that haven't been able to be as dynamic. We have one of the ways that we're able to make this project continue to move forward is we're utilizing materials and equipment that was purchased or signed into contract for production earlier. And so we're kind of spreading it out amongst projects. But to your earlier point, there are lots of developers who sign landowners for renewables projects, wind or solar. And, you know, it's usually 3 or 4 or 5 years for them to try and put the project together. But an agreement like this helps the project actually get to the finish line. Developers can sign an agreement for any landowner for $1,000 an acre, $500 an acre. But if they can't get it to a point where it's buildable and it makes sense to you know, put it on the market, it doesn't ever get built. And so what we're doing here is we're trying to make this a marketable project so it can get to the finish line and we can put shovels in next fall or winter.
I don't know if you can disclose this or not, but do you have any other projects with Henderson Farms right now, part of their operation?
No, we don't. But I do know that there are other recorded agreements with Henderson Ranch that are not affiliated with us, but we do know of those agreements, and the landowner is very engaged with us and make sure that ours doesn't interfere with the other agreements that he has.
And do you know how close this is to the project that they were going to tie into that gas line? I don't know what that project.
The gas
name on
line.
that one is, but the hydrogen.
Oh, yes. So I've been in touch with those folks, and we're creating if there are any places where they need to access part of their lease, like there, because we were recorded first, we have rights first. And so we're just trying to work together and create spaces for everybody to get along and build what they need to build.
So close proximity to that 600 acres or whatever it is. It's more in the interior of the.
I believe that For the
gas line.
hydrogen, yeah, for the hydrogen project, I believe that we don't have any space for that, but he does have some drilling leases in place. So we have some carve outs for drilling access. But the hydrogen project, they're not going to be within the solar panel array. So, for example, if I think we have over 2,000 acres leased on the parcels, but the actual project boundary where we're going to have solar panels and the fenced acreage, that's where they cannot do their activities. They can do it in other parts of the parcels. But the way that we typically do our projects is we'll lease all of the acreage as much as possible, have our layouts created, and then do an amendment and bring everything down to areas.
When would their lease, are they in a lease at this point?
Yes,
So they've already created a lease for this project.
yes,
You receive payments on that.
yes, that's right. That's right.
And I guess it doesn't change their ag valuation.
No, because everything is still as it is while we work on our side to get as much together to get this project in a constructible position during that time of the lease development term.
I just have a little history out there. I used to have a mortgage on that whole place
Oh.
back in my other life, so I'm
Okay.
pretty familiar with
Yeah.
the entire range.
Yes.
So Ricky, let me ask you this. So they've got this pilot in place where there'll be some monies that would be coming to the county.
Right.
But the owners lose their ag exemption subject to the 5-year rollback, and they would start paying.
They're getting a lease already. They're getting lease.
I understand, but they'll pay the county as well. So this
Right.
goes from like zero taxes or minimal taxes collected to fair market value.
They're the ones that's giving up a lot because once you lose that ag exemption, you know, it's kind of like
Okay.
hard to
Well, it's
reestablish.
probably a pretty healthy lease agreement.
Yeah,
So
I believe so.
So the grazing of the sheep.
Yes, sir.
I mean, if you're going to lose your ag exemption, will require
it's just vegetation control,
Yeah.
probably.
It's just
your lawnmowers.
exactly. It's,
Yeah.
it's vegetation management. It's a
Weed eaters,
Yeah.
tear up the panels.
I mean, they run 6,000 head of cattle on that ranch.
Yes.
I mean, there's not going to be any sheep out there.
we try to do the most sustainable choice when given a selection of choices for vegetation management.
Mhm.
Sheep is a really great way to keep ag involved in the project. A lot of times, most of our projects are in ag areas, so we like to continue use and continue the community use of the land. So sheep grazing is just a way for us to continue the efforts that we're making towards not just having mowers and continuing that lifestyle.
So is this BP's answer for carbon capture?
There are other.
I mean,
carbon
there's
programs
other
for that.
reasons why, a petrochemical company would want to be involved in something like this, right?
Well, they're certainly diversifying, I would say. They're just trying to, they did have their own solar and renewables and wind division. And as I said earlier, they just, it was in the news that they stopped, that they closed that down. But it was also at the same time that they invested in our company. And I think that is the balance that they made, the shift that they made. They do have investment in us, and we are reporting to them. So we're part of their portfolio, but not necessarily within, like, I don't work for BP. My company, my paycheck is coming from Light Source BP.
Yeah, but it's wholly owned by BP.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So petrochemical companies like to see their investments returned fully within a very short period of time. So this one, Ricky talked about his past. Mine we use the term return on capital employed. I think y'all use the terminology return on investment. So do you get your investment back in 36 months? Is that, I mean, because most folks have that. I'm serious. It's a very short window for sending out that much capital until you get it back.
You're not going to like this answer. I can take a stab at it, but no, with solar projects, you don't see a return on investment in 36 months.
Okay.
It's more
So,
of a long.
so I'm having a hard time understanding solar projects then.
Yeah.
You build out
There's something else that we're not hearing. It's why they want it.
Is the federal government subsidizing y'all?
the federal government provides subsidies to many different types of energy generation, including oil and gas, including solar, including wind, including nuclear, including coal. Yes, we are part of the multifaceted energy generation.
So they can afford to sit still.
So I mean, but I'm just wondering if they don't, it's bubbled back up now and they're ready to move forward. Are you in fear of losing some of that because the federal grants are trying to dry up now?
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely a fair question. And like I said, there are many developers who are having to sell their projects to bigger developers because they don't have the backing that we do and the dynamic ability to use previously contracted equipment and spread it out over our current portfolio so that we can continue to move our projects forward.
So you're very close to the coast. What kind of design parameters do you have to sustain hurricane force winds?
Yes, that is what we have been working on basically the last 18 months. So we, let's see, the technology continues to improve, right? Not only do solar panels become more efficient, but they also become stronger and more dense, and they're able to put the solar collecting particles on the top and the bottom, right? The steel tracking devices, the support beams for it, you can either have one of two kinds. One is a fixed tilt where it's just like it is that and that's it. That's very, very stable, especially in a high wind area, but it's not very productive because you can't track the sun, right?
Doesn't follow the sun.
Yes. So the difficulty is in finding a tilted axis so it can move with the sun tracking system that can withstand a larger panel that would produce more energy so we can get to our size, while also staying on to the steel pole. The technology has changed and improved over the last 2 or 3 years to be able to withstand that, but the insurance companies need to approve the connection system. So essentially, if you have the tilting axis tracker and the solar panels, the solar panel will withstand the winds and be good for the winds, and the tracking system will withstand the winds, but the insurance company has to agree that they will insure these two products working together. And that has been the biggest challenge, is having insurance companies agree that the warranty on this product and the warranty on this product will work and will accept that. So that has been the real struggle in any kind of solar development along the Gulf Coast, basically. And we've found a solution between some of our vendors that we use and that we trust, and our insurance company will accept. So it's been a very vigorous journey, arduous journey to get that solution. And that solution can apply to many of our projects along the Texas Gulf Coast. I have a project in South Texas. We have Star Solar. I believe they're fixed tilt, so they don't have to worry about this. But as we move forward and as we try to use the most advanced technology in our projects, we also have to accommodate more reserved and insurable technical requirements. So it's just taken a while for us to get here, but we have a solar panel that will withstand the winds. We have a tracking system that will withstand the winds, and we have an insurance company that will accept the two working together. So that's really been the tough part.
So you have a design basis now for your panels.
Yes.
And they do track.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So as a county, we're just looking to say we're willing to take 100% abatement on something that we don't receive right now. Obviously, we're not getting the revenue off of this $240 million worth of personal property. So as a county, and again, I can work up some analysis to say how much money we're giving up, but we're giving up money that we wouldn't get unless they did this project. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
when you ask the question, is this good for the county? Well, we're getting ag exemption on 1,100 acres. We have potential to get these other revenues. we're allowing to make this project competitive because the taxes are being abated on the personal property. The land is not changing other than we're going to enhance it by losing the ag value. I can also show the revenue from that, work that up for you as well to give you real numbers rather than say the concept sounds good. I can actually generate, I just did that on the solar project and put together like a 10-year cash flow projection on it. I can do the same thing now to understand how the Central Appraisal District appraised it. They came in, they put a 91%, 82%, 70%, they just walked it down to 20%, and then it stays constant. This chart follows that to a T. And so I didn't have that knowledge before. And obviously to give you some real hard numbers to analyze it, I can get that for you to
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Well, that would be great. Just put my mind at ease. But will this thing, the construction activities take place solely from off of Highway 90? Because the solar farm that we have, and again, I didn't get to see the construction of it, but I just saw some of the tail end. They did a lot of damage to county roads by these big heavy trucks bringing in all this heavy equipment, and it was constant for a long time.
$175,000 we're going to get in the next 3 years. I spent twice that on
your
the
roads.
county road that they're fixing to put this on to bring it to us. So
Right.
Yeah, I'm just saying there's going to be damage to those roads because.
so that'll come in the road use agreement.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Exactly right.
and I
Yes,
guess that's
sir.
what I was getting to, Bruce, is that there's more costs associated, and borne by the county than just these taxes. And
Well, it looks like TxDOT's going to be the one that's going to take the biggest brunt.
Right. So to answer your question, the previous agreement from September 2023 did have road use and language that said any county road that was touched. Not only did we have to make the county aware, provide a road use plan. Hey, here's where we're going to come in, come out. Here's the times we're able to do it. But it also had a pre-inventory, essentially saying, okay, if we've identified we're going to use this road, we're going to video the whole road up and down. We're going to provide the county with that evidence, and then after construction is completed, we are going to get it back to the stage that it was in prior or better.
And what's the construction window?
It's currently about 22 to 24 months based on the high activity of projects being built right now. So we've got, most likely we'll go to construction next fall, maybe winter, and then last about 18 months of active construction. And then there might be a lull, or if contractors are on time, it might just go straight to the end. But our in-service date, I believe, is in the spring of 28.
Are there solar panel manufacturers in the U.S.?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And we use American manufacturing procurement products as much as possible, as long as they're economically feasible. So we're limited to that. We try to make the best choices. We try to be sustainable in our choices and America first in our choices.
Okay. Let's get Rick to give us some numbers together. We'll come back and look at it and see what direction we're going to go. Okay.
Any other questions that we could answer?
No, it's pretty enlightening today. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you for the opportunity. We appreciate kind of this forum to openly talk.
You bet.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Great.
Okay. It's about 9:56. We'll call it